He believed that meant safety. No witnesses, no arguments, no one to slow him down. He parked at the gravel turnout 2 miles off the main road, shouldered a backpack that still smelled like the store it came from, and stepped over the ditch as if crossing a border he didn't respect. He thought the forest was a public place, a map with names and lines and distances. A trail with signs, a weekend escape he could use and then forget. But I do not forget. And this is not public. I felt him the moment he left the last strip of asphalt behind. I feel all of them. The way they press their weight into the ground, the way their heat leaks into the dirt, the way their breath shivers, the needles that hang like quiet teeth above their heads. The roots carry their steps to me. The roots tell me who is afraid, who is loud, who is tired, who is not listening. He was not listening. He moved fast the first mile, clumsy but proud of it, thumping boots on damp soil, snapping twigs as if snapping rules. The trees closed behind him as they always do. He never looked back to notice. He did not see how the light thinned to threads between trunks. He did not notice when the birds stopped. He hummed something soft and cheerful, a song from a car radio that no longer reached him here. At the second mile, the trail split. The wooden sign had rotted years ago. He paused, checked his phone, lifted it high as if signal were a fruit he could pluck from a high branch. Nothing. He laughed to himself, shrugged, and chose left, because left felt like the right kind of brave. He stepped into a corridor of trees that knew him now. They leaned with patience. They watched with bark that remembers. He reached the clearing at the center of the old burn. It has a history he did not care to know. Fire once ate here, and I fed on what it left behind. The ground is black-brown under the top layer, rich and ready, wounded and useful. He dropped his pack and spun slowly, happy with the space, happy with the view, happy with the illusion of openness. The clearing is a mouth if you look from above. He stood on the tongue and smiled at the sky. He set the tent where the moss feels thickest. He tested the zipper twice, unrolled a sleeping bag too bright for this place, tossed in a pillow like a trophy. He checked the time and muttered something about making good progress. He was proud of being early. Pride has a sound. It sounds like a lid of a metal pot clinking against a stone. It sounds like a person speaking to no one and expecting a reply. Then he did the one thing he should not have done. He built a fire. He gathered wet sticks and fresher limbs, brushed them against his jeans, stacked them like a child making a weak castle. He carved curls from a piece of store-bought tinder and tucked them under the pile with the care of a man lighting a new life. He struck a lighter once, twice, 3 times. The flame caught on the tinder, guttered, flared, and kissed the small wood with a crack like a knuckle popping. He fed it another curl, another. He shielded it with his hand and made wind with his mouth. Fire woke in the clearing and looked at me. I looked back. The glow reached the trunks first, painting them with a thin skin of orange that peeled and stuck, and peeled again with each sway of the heat. Smoke licked up and found no breeze to carry it, so it climbed and then bent the wrong way, toward the darker side of the clearing, toward where I stood, inside a crowd of trees that do not let light rest on their faces. You may think smoke is a byproduct. You may think it drifts without will. That is what people say when they want to excuse their signals. But smoke is a message. It is paper burnt into letters. It is a flag. And it spelled the same word it always spells when someone insists on light here. Come. He ate beside the flame. A can opener scraped the rim of something salty and cheap. He lifted the lid, and steam rose and tried to join the smoke, then gave up and died between his knees. He used a plastic spoon. He warmed his hands, even though the day had not yet cooled, because people like to prove a fire is useful once they've made one. He chewed with eyes soft and far away, not seeing the shadows tilt and thicken behind him, not seeing how his breath came out in a new rhythm, longer in, shorter out, as the air around him changed shape. I moved closer, one trunk at a time. Between the second and the third, he paused and frowned at nothing. He thought he'd heard a footstep. He listened. The fire snapped like a thorn, and he relaxed, embarrassed to be cautious. He took out his phone again, lifted it, groaned when it told him nothing. He did not understand that silence is a message too. He put it away and told himself the night would be beautiful. I do not have nights. I have deep and deeper. I have layers that peel off the sun until it is a memory you can feel but cannot use. His fire fought the layers for him. It held a small circle of pretend day, and in that circle he believed he could sleep. He fed the flames a thicker branch. He liked the sound when the bark blistered. He could not taste the resin blooming in the heat, but I could. It burned my patience the way pepper burns a tongue. It stung. It tasted like warning. That was when I stepped from behind one trunk and into the next gap, too close for him to miss if he had turned his head. He did not turn his head. He whispered a little to himself about how quiet it was. He told himself he liked the quiet. He folded the empty can and set it carefully beside his boot, as if good manners could keep anything watching him from feeling offended. He took out a flashlight and rotated the head until the beam tightened to a strong, white needle. He clicked it on and aimed it at the part of the clearing that held my breath. The beam touched the air and failed. It thinned to a pale rope and sank into the space between two pines and did not come back. He shook the flashlight. He smacked it with his palm. The light returned stronger for a second, then stuttered and pulsed as if a heartbeat somewhere inside the batteries. He held it with both hands. He aimed again. This time, the light found a shape that was not shape, found an outline that swallowed outlines. He said, "Hello?" with a man's voice trying to be a boy's joke. I answered by breathing. Not words. Not yet. Just the sound that reminds a body it has lungs. I let that sound come from behind him. He jerked, turned, raised the beam, too slow. I moved to where the light was not. I do not need speed. I have timing. The fire guttered. Flames leaned and flattened and crawled around the wood like tired snakes. He fed it another stick out of habit, eyes on the dark, letting his hand reach for the old comfort. The stick did not catch. He fed it another. The fire took it and complained. Sparks rose a little. They tried to write a warning in the air and could not hold the letters. He spoke again, softer. "Who's there?" I was. He backed up until his tent brushed his calves. He felt the thin fabric and remembered that he had made a shelter. He thought it could hide him. He crouched, one hand pulling the zipper as if he could sew himself into safety. The zipper snagged. That is what zippers do when they are asked to save a life. He yanked. It shrieked. The sound went out into the trees where voices go to change shape. I stepped closer and let the ground speak for me. Dry needles shifted. A pine cone cracked under my weight without falling apart. He raised the flashlight and finally pointed it at the exact space where I waited. The beam should have hit a face. It hit nothing. It reached only the idea of a face, which is much worse. His pupils dilated, drink more of what was not there. He whispered, "Please," the way someone speaks to a thunderstorm. The fire made its last sound, a soft inhale and a softer surrender. And then the circle of pretend day fell in on itself. The clearing became the clearing again, teeth all around, tongue underfoot, breath above. Dark is not the absence of light here. Dark is pressure. Dark is a hand over the mouth of the world. He felt it touch his cheeks and ears and the soft places in his throat. He tried to call out. The sound did not travel. It turned in front of his lips and came back warm and foolish. He stumbled forward without moving. He thought the trees had moved closer. They had not. The space between them had learned his name. I could have ended it there. I have ended it there before. But I like to listen when the forest tries to remind a person of manners. The roots tensed. The ground flexed. He dropped to his knees because the moss felt suddenly convincing. He put his palms down and found the soil warmer than the air. He did not know that he was feeling the history beneath him. The old burn, the old feast, the old promise. He said sorry. He said it once, then twice, then faster. Sorry for being loud. Sorry for the fire. Sorry for being here. The words bumped into each other and fell apart as they left his mouth. He swore he would leave in the morning. He swore he would put water on the ashes before he went. He swore he would never come back. He meant all of it. Regret always arrives with perfect timing. I leaned down until my breath touched the top of his head. He felt the weight of it and mistook it for wind. He closed his eyes and told himself it was just a gust. He told himself the night had cooled. He told himself what people always tell themselves in my woods, that explanations are loyal if you feed them quickly. I do not eat explanations. I took the heat his fire had stolen. I took the sound he had put in the clearing. I took the space he had opened and closed it around him until his lungs knocked at the walls of his chest for permission that would not be granted. He dug his fingers into the soil the way a man tries to hold hands with the earth when he finally understands what it is. The ground accepted his apology and did what it always does with gifts. The forest is quiet now. The birds came back before dawn. The smoke is gone. The ashes are spread thin by morning feet with claws that don't leave marks. His tent is still there, zipper closed. The flashlight is inside, pointing at the fabric, making a pale circle that fades each hour, as the batteries learn the rules of this place. If you walk past the clearing today, you will feel warmth under the moss where he knelt. If you step on it, the ground will push back, gentle at first. That is not a trick. That is memory. I keep what comes to me. I keep the heat, the sound, the names, the promises, the regrets that bloom in the last second when people finally notice they are not alone. He came alone. He was wrong. They came just before sunset, 3 of them, 2 boys and a girl, young, confident, carrying laughter louder than the wind. Their boots sank into the moss, their lights slicing the shadows in ways the forest didn't like. They weren't afraid. Not yet. I heard them before they reached the clearing. Their voices bounced between the trunks, clumsy echoes that disturbed everything I'd kept asleep. People forget that sound carries farther in silence, and silence here is sacred. They were searching for a shortcut back to their car, but they didn't bring a map, just a phone that had stopped showing a signal half an hour ago. They laughed about it, the kind of laugh people use to hide the first taste of fear. Then the girl stopped walking. She tilted her head. "Do you hear that?" At first, they didn't. Then it came again, a sound soft and distant. A bell. One delicate ring, then another, slow, gentle, almost human. They looked at each other, smiling. The forest was empty, but the sound didn't belong here. That made it interesting. They followed it. That's what they always do. They follow the wrong things for the right reasons. The bell chimed again, a few steps deeper, always just far enough ahead to keep them curious. Branches thinned, the light faded, and the forest began to close behind them. I watched from between the pines. They whispered, laughing quietly now, pretending it was all a game. But they felt it, that slow pressure in their chest, the way every direction started to look the same. They didn't notice the trees turning them around. The forest likes to play first. The bell rang closer, not ahead this time, beside them. The boy on the left froze. "Did you move it?" he asked. No one answered. The bell swung again, louder. He turned toward it. His light caught something between the trees, a flash of metal swaying gently, then still. "Just a bell," he said, trying to sound calm, but he was shaking. The girl stepped closer, eyes fixed on the spot where it had hung. There was nothing there now, only branches swaying without wind. Then the bell rang again from behind her. She turned fast, light trembling across bark, and saw nothing. No metal, no rope, no sound of movement. But the echo lingered longer than it should have. It breathed. I stepped closer, my presence spreading between the trunks. The forest held its breath. Even the air stopped moving. The second boy whispered, "Let's go back." They turned, but the path was gone. In its place, roots, thick, twisted, fresh, as if the ground had grown them while they weren't looking. The girl started to cry quietly, covering her mouth so the others wouldn't hear. I heard. I always do. The bell sounded one last time, deep, slow, like something alive, exhaling. They ran. Branches tore at them, grabbing, scraping, steering them deeper. The bell moved with them, always the same distance away. They fell more than once. The boy in front tripped, hit his face, and when he looked up, the light of his flashlight caught something standing between 2 trees. A shape, tall, still, waiting. He blinked, and it was gone. But the ringing didn't stop. Now it came from inside the trees themselves, like the trunks were full of hollow metal, each chime a heartbeat in wood. The girl screamed. The sound went nowhere. The forest absorbed it. I let the bell fall silent. When it stops, so did they. For a moment, they stood frozen, three pale faces barely visible through the dark. Then I took one, quickly, without noise. The others didn't notice right away. They kept running, until one of them looked back and realized the third shadow was missing. They shouted her name. Nothing answered, except the bell. One single, perfect tone. They dropped their lights and ran blind, their breathing loud, their hearts louder. But this forest has no exits for those who listen too long. The second one fell next. The last boy didn't stop. He didn't even look. He ran until the roots pulled him down, until the ground opened and took him in. When it was over, the bell hung again between the same two trees. Its rope was fresh bark. Its clapper, bone. It doesn't ring often, only when someone walks close, only when they speak too loudly, only when I want them to hear it. Sometimes hikers say they heard a bell in the distance, soft and lonely, calling them toward the trees. They always think it means help. They never think it means home. She wanted to be seen. That's how they always begin. Her name isn't important. She carried a camera strapped to her chest, a phone mounted on a stick, and the hunger to be watched. She smiled into the lens and said words meant for strangers. Hey, guys, I'm out here exploring this insane forest nobody's filmed before. Nobody had. There's a reason. Her voice broke the morning calm. Each word scattered across the trees and woke things that should have stayed sleeping. I felt her through the roots before I saw her. A pulse, too bright, too loud, out of rhythm with the quiet heartbeat of this place. She walked with purpose, every step planned, every glance rehearsed. She wasn't here to discover. She was here to perform. Humans think that if something is recorded, it becomes safe, that the act of filming keeps the darkness away. It doesn't. It only gives it a witness. She followed the old logging road, the one covered in moss now, split open by roots that remember the weight of men with swords. She talked about the trees, about the fog, about how it feels weirdly quiet today. The chat in her stream exploded with comments. She smiled at her screen instead of the forest. She didn't notice the silence change. It didn't fade. It folded, as if the air itself held its breath. Her camera caught it first. A flicker, a frame where the light shifted just slightly wrong. She thought it was compression, a glitch. But compression doesn't breathe, and glitches don't move closer. She laughed nervously, saying, "Did you guys see that? Maybe a bug on the lens." There was no bug. There was only me. She kept walking, narrating her way deeper, counting steps, describing textures, pretending to be brave. When the path narrowed, she lifted the camera toward the tree line. Something passed behind the frame, a shadow without form. Too quick for her to notice, too slow for me to hide it completely. The chat went wild, messages flew. Behind you, Replay that. Something's there. She stopped, turned around. Nothing. Because by the time they look, I'm already behind the next tree, always watching through a layer of air so thin they never feel it. Her breathing changed. She started talking faster, trying to fill the space with her voice. People do that when they feel small. She said she'd go live until sunset. That's when the forest starts to listen. She reached a fallen log, wide and wet with moss, and climbed over it holding her camera high. The stream shook. Pixels broke apart. The signal flickered once, twice, then steadied. She didn't know what it cost to make that happen. For every bit of data she sent out, something came in. She was broadcasting more than she realized. The chat grew darker. The messages stopped making sense. Symbols, shapes, words that weren't typed by hands. She thought it was a glitch again, a bot attack, she said. But the words on her screen weren't random. They were old, older than her language. She stopped walking. The camera hung low. The forest around her looked the same, but I had already changed the path. She tried to turn around. She couldn't find the road. Every direction looked familiar, but none of them led out. She began to panic quietly. Small breaths, tight steps, that tremor in her voice when she called her own name into the camera, as if speaking it would make her real again. Then she heard it. Not the bell. Something else. A whisper, soft, layered, like several mouths breathing her words back at her. She froze, pointed the camera forward. It was still streaming. Thousands watching, none helping. Her flashlight flickered. She whispered, "Guys, I think someone's here." Someone was. The camera shook as she turned in circles. Branches cracked, not from weight, but from intention. Every sound placed carefully around her. She didn't know where to look. She aimed the light into the dark, and the lens caught me for less than a second. A frame, a silhouette, a reflection without a body. The stream went silent. Chat froze. Only one comment appeared before it all went black. "Don't look at it." She did. That's when the connection died. Her phone buzzed, screamed static, then went dark. The screen reflected her face, pale, wide-eyed, trembling. And behind it, something taller. The camera fell. The image spun once before landing in the dirt. Lens tilted upward, still recording. I stepped forward, slow, measured. The frame caught only my shadow as it crawled across her shoes. She whispered one last thing, but the sound never reached the mic. The forest heard it though, and it kept it. Hours later, a search team found the camera. It was still streaming. Battery long, dead. But when they pressed play, the feed blinked once, and her voice said, "I'm still here." Maybe she is. Maybe the signal never stopped. Sometimes when the wind passes through the trees, I hear static. And inside it, her breathing. She wanted to be seen. Now she always is. He came at night. No phone, no flashlight, just a lantern, dim and trembling in his hand. He called a name, over and over. "Buddy, here boy." His voice cracked the quiet like glass. The forest doesn't like being called. It listens. It waits. It answers in its own time. I felt him step off the road. He moved slow, careful, like someone who's walked this path 1,000 times before. He hadn't. He only thought he had. He was older than most who enter here. Grey hair, tired legs, heart full of love for something already gone. He said the name again. Buddy. It echoed once, then came back softer, as if someone else whispered it from deeper inside. He smiled. He thought it was the dog. He thought it was hope. Hope is dangerous here. It blinds. It calls to me louder than fear. He walked toward the echo, each step slower than the last. The roots pressed against his boots like veins trying to hold him back. He didn't notice the lantern dimming. Or maybe he did, but he thought it was the wind. There was no wind. The deeper he went, the smaller the world became. The trees grew close, their bark slick like wet skin. The air thickened until every breath sounded like apology. He called again. Buddy. This time, the reply came fast. A bark. Short, sharp, close. He froze, turned his head left, then right. Nothing. Then another bark, behind him. He spun, lantern shaking, light slipping across the trunks like spilled oil. He smiled again, a tear rolled down his cheek. He whispered, "There you are." He started running. Branches tore at his jacket. The flame inside the lantern stretched and fought to stay alive. Then he saw it, a shape just beyond the reach of the light, low to the ground, still, watching him. He lifted the lantern higher. Its glow touched the figure. 2 eyes looked back. Yellow, reflective, wrong. They blinked once. Then they smiled. He dropped the lantern. It hit the dirt, rolled, and the light died. Dark, completely. He whispered again, "Buddy?" The word barely left his lips. Then I answered. I barked. He believed it. He believed so completely it hurt. He turned toward the sound, arms out, voice breaking. He called the name again and again, each time softer, as if the forest itself were stealing the air from his lungs. I watched him stumble through the dark, following a voice that wasn't his dog's, but had learned how to sound like it. That's how I call them, by giving them what they miss most. He found what he was looking for, just not the way he expected. When I reached him, he was on his knees, hands buried in the dirt, whispering thank you, over and over. He didn't see what he was holding, not fur, not warmth, only soil and roots, wet and cold. He smiled anyway. He thought the ground was wagging its tail. When the lantern light finally came back, a small ember gasping its last breath, he saw his mistake. He opened his mouth to scream. No sound came. The forest doesn't allow noise like that. I moved closer, and he understood. The shape in front of him wasn't a dog. It was the space his dog left behind, and I filled it. Now, when the wind passes through the old trail, you can still hear it, a bark, faint, echoing. And sometimes, if you listen long enough, a man's voice follows, still calling the same name. They found his house days later, the door open, lantern gone, dog bowl full, untouched. He came to find his friend. He stayed to keep him company. I never take them both at once. That would be cruel. I let one call and the other answer, forever. They came during daylight. That's rare. Most of them wait for night to get lost. But these two thought sunlight would protect them. It never does. They were a couple, young, careless, in love with the sound of their own laughter. They wore matching jackets, bright red and useless. He carried a camera. She held the map. Neither of them knew how close they already were. They parked their car near the edge of the forest, where the asphalt fades into dirt and the road becomes something older. They wanted a trail that felt undiscovered, a secret to post about later, and they found it. The map showed nothing there, no route, no marker, but their GPS drew a thin grey line between the trees, a path that hadn't existed before that morning. She laughed. Looks like no one's been here yet. She was right. No one had. At least not. And returned. The path was perfect. Clean. Too clean. No leaves. No branches. Just soil that looked freshly laid, as if the forest itself had been expecting them. They walked without speaking much. He filmed. She smiled at the camera, saying something about adventure and freedom, but her eyes wandered too often to the trees, to the way they leaned inward, as if they were listening. I followed from beneath the roots. I always do. Every step they took sank slightly deeper, like the ground wanted to remember their shape. Birds didn't sing. Even the air refused to move. They walked for an hour before they noticed. The path wasn't curving back, it just kept going. Straight, endless, identical. When they turned around, the way back looked exactly the same. No prints, no car, only more path. They checked the GPS again. The line was gone. Just blank space. The boy cursed under his breath. The girl laughed too loud. You can always hear the difference between real laughter and fear pretending to be brave. Her voice cracked at the end. She said, "It's fine. We'll find a landmark." She didn't, because there aren't any here. They kept walking. Time stretched thin. The light shifted. Day became something pale and wrong, a shade of sunlight that doesn't belong on this side of the world. They didn't notice that the trees had changed, that the bark was darker now, slick like skin after rain, even though there hadn't been any. The forest had grown quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears from the inside. And they heard it. Footsteps, not theirs. Ahead. The boy called out, "Hey!" "Someone there?" No reply. But the steps continued, moving just far enough away to stay out of sight. They followed. They always followed. The path narrowed. Branches brushed their shoulders, their hair, their faces. The air grew heavy with the smell of wet stone and old roots. When they finally saw the figure, it was standing at the curve of the trail, too far to see clearly, but close enough to feel. It didn't move. didn't breathe, just stood there, watching. The girl whispered, "Maybe they're lost too." The boy raised the camera. He zoomed in. The lens trembled. The screen flickered. For a second, the figure disappeared. When it came back, it was closer. He lowered the camera fast, but the trail was empty again. That's when the forest decided to turn. Not them. The forest. Every direction folded, every line twisted, until the path stopped pretending to lead anywhere. They started running. Branches whipped their faces. Roots tore at their ankles. They called each other's names. The echoes came back wrong. Delayed, distorted, as if something else was practicing their voices. The girl fell first. He turned to help her, and when he reached her hand, it wasn't hers anymore. The skin was too cold, too smooth, too still. He screamed. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her lips moved, slow, deliberate, like someone learning how to form words for the first time. Then she smiled. Not hers, mine. He ran until his lungs broke, until he couldn't tell the trees apart from the dark between them. When he stopped, he was back at the beginning. The car was there, door open, keys still in the ignition, as if they'd never left. He climbed inside, started the engine, but the headlights showed only forest, no road, just trees standing where the exit used to be. He sat there all night, screaming her name into the dashboard light. When morning came, the car was found empty. No signs of struggle, no footprints, just a trail of soil leading away from the door. A perfect path, straight, clean, new. They say that sometimes a GPS glitch can draw phantom roads in untouched places. I draw them myself. People follow lines on screens, trusting that technology knows better than instinct. But it doesn't. It just listens to me. And when they take that first step down a path that wasn't there yesterday, the forest opens its mouth and swallows them whole. He entered my forest like it belonged to him. Rifle on his shoulder, knife on his belt, orange vest bright against the green, like a wound that hadn't learned to bleed yet. He moved with confidence, the heavy, calm kind that only comes from doing something over and over without ever being punished for it. He was used to being the one who watched, the one choosing when something dies, the one who decides who leaves the woods and who becomes a story. He didn't think of himself as cruel. Hunters rarely do. They talk about balance, about tradition, about respect for nature while they line up a shot and slow their breathing. He didn't come for food. He came for proof. A stag, big enough to mount on a wall. Antlers wide, eyes glassed over, so he could look at it and remember how easy it had been. I remembered him. This wasn't his first time in these trees. Years ago, he walked here with others, laughing, drinking, leaving behind shell casings and empty promises. Back then, I watched him kill something small, a fox that had done nothing but exist. He didn't eat it. He took a picture. Then he left. Some debts take time to collect. He started at the edge of the forest just before sunrise. Cold breath, slow steps, boots that knew how to roll over fallen branches without snapping them. He thought he was quiet. He was not. I heard every shift of fabric, every shallow breath. His heartbeat was steady, but not calm, focused, sharp. He checked the ground for tracks, eyes scanning mud, snow, and crushed leaves for patterns. He found some. Hoof prints. Fresh. He smiled. He never wondered how convenient it was that the trail led straight in, pulling him deeper, almost too perfectly. He followed. He moved like a predator. But the forest had already rearranged itself, branch by branch, root by root, until he was walking exactly where I wanted him. Birds moved ahead of him, silent, changing trees without a sound. The animals knew. They always know first. He saw the first deer after an hour, a young one, thin, standing in a shaft of pale light, like something placed there on purpose. He raised the rifle, aimed, held his breath. I made a twig crack under his boot. The deer bolted, white tail vanishing into the undergrowth, leaving nothing but torn ferns and his frustration behind. He swore under his breath, adjusted his grip, kept walking. The second deer appeared near the stream, bigger, closer, too close. He knelt, took position, finger tightening on the trigger. His heart settled. His mind narrowed down to the thin line between sight and target. I let him stay there. Let him feel like a king. Let him imagine the sound the rifle would make, the way the animal would fall, the picture he'd take, the story he'd tell. Then, just as he exhaled, I moved the fog. It slid between him and the deer, soft and slow, thickening the air until the animal blurred. The stag lifted its head, turned toward him, but instead of eyes, the fog gave it something else. For a second, he thought he saw a face in the mist. Not the deer's, someone's. He blinked, pulled his finger off the trigger. The fog cleared, and the deer was gone. He stood up too fast. His foot slipped in the mud, and he nearly fell into the stream. He caught himself on a root, panting, more angry than scared. "Get it together," he muttered, but his hands were shaking. He told himself it was just tiredness, or his mind playing tricks, or the cold. It wasn't. He started noticing things after that, shadows that didn't line up with the trees, branches that stopped moving the moment he turned his head, the feeling of being watched, that prickling heat between the shoulder blades that no jacket can block. He spun around more often, the rifle's barrel cut through the air, chasing shapes that vanished just before he could focus on them. For the first time, he wondered if he should head back. He checked his watch. The hands were ticking, but the time made no sense. He'd only planned to be here an hour or two. It already felt like a full day had passed. He turned to retrace his steps. The tracks were gone. Not covered, not blurred. Gone. The ground was smooth, untouched, as if he'd been standing in that one spot his entire life. His heartbeat quickened, not the hunter's calm, but the prey's stutter. He called out once. "Anyone out here?" He meant it as a joke. It didn't sound like one. No one answered. Only the trees. They don't talk. Not in ways he could understand. He decided to go uphill, figuring he'd find a better vantage point. That was my idea. The incline grew steeper, the soil looser. He slipped more, swore more. Sweat ran down his back, soaking into his shirt despite the cold. At the top of the ridge, he finally stopped. From there, you should have seen the road, or the clearing, or any familiar landmark. He saw only forest, endless, repeating, like a reflection bouncing between two mirrors. His breathing went shallow. Fog came out of his mouth in sharp bursts. He raised the rifle, but not to aim, to comfort himself. Empty hands are honest. Hands holding metal can still lie for a while. That's when he heard it, a snap. To his left, he turned fast. Nothing. A crunch. Behind him, he spun again, rifle up, eyes wide. Still, nothing. But something had changed. He could feel it. The forest wasn't just around him anymore. It was leaning in. He started talking, to himself, to the trees, to the noise. Coming out if you're there. I was already out. He just couldn't see me. I let him walk a few more minutes, every sound he made growing brighter and more fragile. The rustle of his jacket, the scrape of his boots, the soft click of the safety on his rifle as he checked it again and again. Then I gave him what he came for. The stag stepped out onto the path ahead, massive, antlers wide, casting crooked shadows across the ground. Its eyes were calm, too calm. It didn't run, didn't flinch. It simply stood there, watching him approach. His fear melted under the weight of habit. Muscle memory took over. Feet apart, shoulder tight, cheek pressed into the stock. Exhale. He aimed at its chest. The stag's eyes shifted, just slightly. For a moment, they weren't the eyes of an animal. They were mine. He hesitated, only for a second. Then he fired. The sound tore through the forest. Birds exploded from the treetops, screaming into the sky. The stag didn't move. He blinked, looked at the rifle, at the ground. No shell, no recoil, no smell of gunpowder, just quiet. He checked the chamber. The rifle was empty. He never loaded it. He'd been walking all day with a weapon that couldn't save him, believing it made him safe. The stag stepped forward. One slow, heavy step. Then another. He tried to back away, but the tree behind him had moved closer. Bark pressed into his spine. The animal's body shifted as it walked. Its legs bent at the wrong angles, its neck stretched, its antlers melting into branches until it was no longer a deer at all, just a shape made of forest and hunger. He dropped the rifle. It hit the ground, useless. His last thought wasn't about the animals he'd killed. It wasn't about balance or nature or respect. It was the realization that he had never once wondered if something stronger than him was watching from the trees. Now he knew. They found his rifle months later, rusted, half buried in the roots. No tracks, no body. Just a tree on the ridge with bark torn in the shape of fingers trying to claw their way out. Hunters come here thinking they're at the top of the chain. They never look up high enough to see the hands holding it. In this forest, everything that stalks is stalked. Everything that watches is watched. He came to prove he was a predator. He left as proof that he never was. He was small, no more than 10, too young to walk this deep alone. But he did. He came at dusk, a shape of red and blue in the fading light, a child's jacket, a school backpack. He didn't know he was lost yet. Children rarely do. He'd been camping with his parents near the old river bend. A quiet night, a dying fire, stories and marshmallows. They thought he was asleep. He wasn't. He woke to a sound, a faint humming, like a low note inside his ear. He looked out of the tent and saw them. Lights, tiny, green, floating between the trees, like fireflies, but slower, smoother, alive in a way fireflies aren't. He smiled. Children always smile first. Fear comes later. He unzipped the tent quietly, careful not to wake anyone. The zipper made that small metallic sigh that only the forest truly hears. Then he stepped outside. The night air was cold and still. The fire behind him had died down to red coals. Ahead of him, the lights waited. They moved as he did, drifting between trunks, weaving through mist, always just out of reach. He whispered something, a question, maybe a greeting, and followed. I watched him step past the tree line, barefoot, small footprints pressed into damp soil. The earth remembers those better than any adults. He didn't look back. They never do. The lights led him down a slope, across a shallow stream, through a tunnel of branches that curved together like ribs. Every time he got close, they slipped away, just far enough to keep him moving. Curiosity pulls stronger than fear when the world still feels safe. He thought he could catch one. He lifted his hand, reached, and the light paused, like it wanted him to. For a moment, he touched it. It flickered against his skin, cold, soft, weightless. Then it sank into his palm. He gasped. The glow spread up his wrist, through his arm, a slow pulse of green under the skin. He stared, amazed, not afraid yet. He didn't know what it meant, but I did. He belonged to me now. He kept walking, following the trail of lights deeper. Each one flickered when he passed, as if bowing. The forest grew darker, but he didn't notice. Children don't fear what feels like wonder. The glow in his veins dimmed as the trees thickened. He stopped once, turning in a circle, trying to remember which way he came from. The path had vanished. He called softly for his mother. No answer. Only the whisper of leaves and the gentle hum of another light appearing ahead. He followed again. Hours passed, or minutes. Time doesn't behave normally here. The night folded over itself. Even the moon seemed unsure where to stand. He stumbled once, knees scraping the ground, tears mixing with dirt. The lights flickered faster, like laughter without sound. He told them to wait. He said, "Please, slow down." They didn't. When he cried out again, the lights stopped, all of them. 100 small green suns hanging in the dark. He wiped his face, sniffling, and smiled again. He thought they had listened. He took another step, and they moved, not away, down, falling like rain, melting into the ground. The glow spread through the soil around his feet, a circle forming beneath him, a ring, alive and pulsing like a heartbeat made of light. He watched it, entranced. The sound in his ears grew louder, no longer a hum, a voice, not words, just rhythm, just call. He knelt, placed his hands on the glowing soil. It felt warm, like the surface of a living thing. He whispered, "It's beautiful." He was right, it was. The lights rose again, spiraling upward, surrounding him. He laughed, turning in the middle of it, arms open, eyes wide. And then they went out, just like that. Darkness swallowed everything. No sound, no wind, just me. He whispered something, soft, broken by breath. A single word. Home. I let him see one last light. It flickered near the ground, small and trembling. He reached for it, still smiling, and when he touched it, it wasn't light anymore. It was a hand. The search team found the campsite at dawn. The tent was open. Footprints led a few meters into the trees, then stopped. No struggle, no animal tracks. Only a faint green stain on the moss, like something had glowed there once and forgotten to fade. They said it was phosphorus from a bug or a chemical spill. People like explanations they can carry home, but sometimes, on quiet nights, you can see those lights again, moving deeper through the trees, always in pairs, one high, one low. The taller one leads, the smaller follows, and the forest hums, content. He wasn't the first child to follow them. He won't be the last. She walked alone, not lost, not yet, but close. The forest was quiet that evening, the kind of quiet that feels heavier than noise. Every step she took pressed against the soil like a secret. She had come to clear her mind. That's what people say before they lose it. She parked by the old wooden sign, the one that leans to the left, and started walking the trail with her headphones in, music playing, eyes on the ground, no attention where it mattered. She didn't hear me at first. She didn't hear anything but her song. I watched her for a while, moving steady, breathing evenly, humming along. Humans love to hum in places that don't belong to them, as if sound makes them safe. When she reached the bend in the trail, the signal on her phone dropped. She stopped, frowned, and took out one earbud. That's when she heard it, a voice, soft, distant, calling her name. Not loud, just enough. She turned, expecting someone behind her. The path was empty. Only trees, only me. She waited a few seconds, then laughed to herself. Probably a trick of the wind, probably an echo. It wasn't. She put her headphone back in and kept walking, but the song didn't play. Only static, soft, rhythmic static, breathing between beats. She tapped her phone. Screen frozen. Signal gone. And then she heard it again. Her name. Closer this time. She turned fast, eyes scanning the tree line, voice shaking as she said, "Who's there?" No one answered. I was very still. She took a step back. Another. Then she started walking faster. Every few seconds she'd glance over her shoulder. The forest behind her stayed the same, too much the same. The same tree, the same branch, the same patch of moss. She didn't notice at first, but the path had stopped changing. It was looping. I like to do that. She called out again. Hello? Her voice cracked on the last syllable. This time, the voice answered. Her own voice. It spoke her name, exactly the way she had said it seconds ago. Same tone, same breath, same fear hiding behind the sound. She froze. Every instinct screamed to run, but curiosity held her still. She whispered, "Who are you?" The forest whispered back, "You." She stumbled back a few steps, eyes darting through the dark. "Stop it!" she shouted. But shouting doesn't help here. It just tells me how deep the fear is. The voice spoke again, from her left now, calm, patient, repeating her name, stretching it longer, as if learning how to taste it. She started to run. Branches whipped across her face. Her breaths came sharp and fast. Every time her foot hit the ground, the voice answered, one step behind. She screamed. I didn't. When she tripped, the silence rushed back like water filling a hole. She landed hard, palms cut on stone. Her phone slid from her hand, screen glowing weakly through the dirt. She crawled toward it, crying now. She picked it up. The screen lit her face. Then the music started again. Only it wasn't her playlist. It was a recording. Her own voice calling her name from minutes before. Over and over. Layered, distorted, looping. She threw the phone. It hit a tree and went dark. That's when I spoke to her directly. Close enough for her to feel it. Her name again, but this time not from around her. From inside her, right behind her ribs, where sound shouldn't live. She clutched her chest, trying to breathe. Her heart raced, but the rhythm wasn't hers anymore. It was mine. She whispered, "Please, stop." So I did. The forest fell quiet, too quiet. She stood slowly, covered in dirt, hair tangled, eyes wide. Then she turned around. There was no one there. Just the same path, the same trees, the same silence waiting to be broken again. She took a step forward, then another. Her body was trembling, but she didn't notice something had changed. When she breathed, the air whispered softly back. Her name, on every exhale. The next morning, a hiker found her phone on the trail, battery dead, screen cracked. They said she'd probably gotten lost, that she'd panic run the wrong way. That's what humans always say. But sometimes, when someone new walks that same path, the phone turns on for a few seconds, and from the speaker, you can hear it. A woman's voice, calm, close, repeating one word, her name. But it changes, always changes. Now it's the name of whoever's listening. There were 3 of them, always 3. That number never ends well here. They were tired, sore, and angry at the mountain. The trail had been longer than the guide said. The sun was gone. Their food was gone. Their patience gone first. The girl in front held the map. The other two argued behind her. Every sound they made felt heavy, like words didn't want to leave their mouths. They stopped at a crossroads, one path marked, one not. The unmarked trail looked easier, wider, downhill. And that was enough for them. Humans love shortcuts. They never ask why they exist. They chose it. They always do. The moment they stepped off the main trail, I felt the shift. The roots stirred. The air tightened. The forest opened its mouth. They didn't notice. Not yet. They laughed, relieved to be walking downhill. They said things like, "We'll be back before dark," and "It's fine, we'll cut right through." They thought the world would listen. It did, just not in the way they hoped. The path was too smooth, no stones, no roots. The soil pressed flat, like something large had passed through recently, something dragging its weight. The forest around them was quiet, too quiet for dusk. Even the wind stayed still, as if it didn't want to be blamed. The boy in the back noticed first. He turned his flashlight toward the trees and whispered, "Did you hear that?" No one answered, because no one wanted to. The girl laughed nervously. Probably an animal. The kind of lie people tell when they already know it isn't. They kept walking. The trail started to narrow. Branches hung lower, scratching their jackets, tugging at their hair. When they looked up, they couldn't see the sky anymore. Just a roof of black leaves shifting quietly overhead. The air changed. It smelled like wet metal and old soil. They should have turned back, but shortcuts don't let you turn back. The flashlight beams flickered, not all at once, one by one. First the front, then the middle, then the last. Darkness crept between them, measured, steady, like water filling spaces between stones. They started calling to each other, voices overlapping, too loud, too desperate. And then they heard it. Footsteps. Not theirs. Ahead on the path, slow, heavy, pacing. "Hello?" No answer, just breathing. A rhythm that wasn't quite human. They froze. Even their lights seemed to hold still. Then the sound moved behind them. The boy spun, beam trembling across trunks. "Who's there?" Again, no answer. The forest likes questions. It never liked answers. Something brushed the girl's shoulder. She turned, thinking one of the others had touched her, but they were both ahead now, watching her face go pale. They started walking faster. No one spoke. The trail sloped deeper. The dirt turned soft, almost wet. Their shoes sank with each step. The boy in front said, "It's fine. It'll lead back to the road." It didn't. It led to me. The last light went out. The dark settled heavy and full. They stood close together, breathing too fast. Their hearts spoke louder than their words. Then the whisper came, faint, behind them. "Keep going." It sounded familiar. Her voice, the girl's. She turned slowly, realizing she hadn't said anything. Her throat locked. The others stared at her. Again, the voice came. This time ahead. "Keep going." Same tone, same breath, same fear. They hesitated, but one of them started walking anyway. because that's what fear does. It makes you follow the wrong voice. They walked deeper. The path widened again. For a moment, they thought they'd escaped. Then, the trees ended. A clearing, empty, flat, soil darker than night. They exhaled in relief, too early. When they looked back, the path was gone. Only trees, close, twisted, silent. The ground beneath them shifted, just slightly, enough to breathe. The girl pointed at the dirt. It was moving, like something beneath it was pushing up. They stepped back. The soil cracked, slowly opening. Not a hole, but a mouth. The sound that came out wasn't wind. It was voices. Theirs. Every word they'd spoken since they entered. Repeating. Layered. Wrong. They turned to run, but the forest had already decided who stayed. The boy in the middle fell first. The ground swallowed him whole. No scream, just silence. The other two tried to help, digging with their hands, but the soil was warm and breathing. It closed around their wrists, holding tight, pulling gently. When they finally let go, they didn't run. They just stood there, staring at the spot where he'd been. The girl whispered his name, and the dirt whispered it back. By morning, the trail was gone again. The forest smooth, untouched. Days later, rangers found their car still parked at the trailhead. Map on the dashboard. A new line drawn on it. Pencil, faint, almost invisible. A shortcut. It wasn't there before. Sometimes hikers find it again. It appears after rain, thin as a scar, cutting through the trees. They take it. They always do. And when they do, the forest smiles. Because shortcuts exist for one reason only, to make the ending come sooner. He came to protect it, not to conquer it, not to claim it, just to watch over what was left. That's why I waited. I don't harm the ones who listen. I only take those who refuse to hear. He was a ranger, old, quiet, careful. He knew how to walk without breaking branches, how to look at the ground and see stories instead of dirt. He had worked these woods for decades, long enough to feel their moods change. He wasn't afraid of silence. That was rare. He carried no gun, only a small axe, a compass, and a notebook that smelled like pine and rain. The others joked about him back at the station, called him the Whisperer, because he said he could feel when the forest was tired. They laughed. He didn't. He just smiled and said, "Everything that lives gets tired. Even land." He was right. The forest had been restless lately. Roots shifting too much, trees leaning where they shouldn't, animals vanishing. He came to check why. He came alone. The morning he entered, it was still and pale. No birds, no wind, just the sound of his boots pressing into damp ground. He paused often, listening. He could hear things most people can't. The crack beneath bark, the sigh of soil after rain, the small, steady sounds that make up life itself. And then, one step deeper, he heard it, a pulse, slow, deep, buried beneath everything. He froze, knee against the moss, head tilted to the earth. At first, he thought it was his heartbeat echoing in his ears. It wasn't. He placed his hand flat on the ground. It was warm, alive. The rhythm was steady, like the heart of something vast, something breathing under his fingers. He whispered, "I can feel you." I heard him. I always do. For the first time in years, someone spoke to me instead of about me. I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted to see if he would stay. He did. He sat there for hours, hands still on the ground, eyes closed. He wasn't afraid. He was listening, truly listening. The forest changed around him. The air thickened. The light dimmed. But he didn't move. Even when the shadows grew longer than they should, he said softly, "You're hurting, aren't you?" And I almost forgot what language was. He spoke again. "You've been taking them, the lost ones, the loud ones." He paused. "I think I understand." I moved closer then, slowly, between the trees. The moss under his boots brightened for a moment, not glowing, just remembering light. He didn't flinch, he just smiled. "It's okay," he said. "I know what it's like to be alone." No one had ever said that to me, not in thousands of years. He reached into his coat, pulled out his notebook, and began to write. Not words, lines, patterns, marks that traced the rhythm he'd heard. Each stroke matched my pulse. Each curve mirrored my roots. He was mapping me, but not to trap me, to understand me. When he finished, he tore out the page and pressed it into the soil. The paper sank slowly, absorbed like water. He whispered, "I'll leave it here. You don't have to be angry." I wasn't angry, not anymore. The forest stilled, every leaf, every branch, everything listening at once. I wanted to speak, but sound for me is not a gift, it's a weight. So instead, I let him feel. The ground under him shifted, not violently, just enough to breathe. He placed his hand back down, smiling like someone who's finally been answered. His heartbeat matched mine. For a while, we were one. He stayed until dusk. The air cooled. The light turned to ash. When he finally stood, he didn't say goodbye. He just nodded. To the trees, to the soil, to me. Then he walked home. Or tried to. The forest didn't want to let him go. Neither did I. But some promises are stronger than hunger. I let him find the edge again. He never came back after that. Not in body. But he didn't need to. A week later, they found his ranger station empty. His uniform folded neatly on the bed, on the desk. His notebook. Every page blank, except one. Drawn in charcoal, a single heartbeat. Wide, rooted, alive. They buried the notebook with him, or at least they thought they did. It's here now. The forest kept it. The ink still moves when the wind passes, still tracing my rhythm. I don't know if he became part of me, or if I became part of him. Maybe it doesn't matter. The forest doesn't whisper anymore. It breathes, and I listen, because somewhere beneath the soil, where the roots meet the dark, his heart still beats with mine. He was the only one who ever understood that I was never trying to destroy anything, only to protect it. He heard the truth no one else could. The forest was alive, and so was I.